Welcome, everybody. My name is Munir. I'm the General Manager of End User Computing in AWS. This is a very, very special time for me. This is my fifth reInvent. 14 years at Amazon, a number of years, 8 of those years in AWS, about 7 of those years working with the End User Computing organization. 5 reInvents, this is the 4th time I'm actually here speaking. And if any of you had a chance to attend some of the talks, some of the leadership sessions, like for instance, Adam's this morning, pretty awesome. He talked about the seas, he talked about the universe. I believe something like a septillion stars estimated. We're not going to be talking about that here today. He did, however, talk about one other thing, something that I think is on all of our minds, something that we hear about a ton. He talked about the economy. That's exactly where I'm going to start this conversation here today. Let's hit it head on. We're the people in IT, application developers, ISVs. We're the ones who have experience with our leadership coming to us first, saying, hey, can you help me cut costs? Hey, can you help me deal with all of these things that are going on? High inflation, supply chain issues, labor issues, employment issues. These are the sorts of things that this group, fortunately or unfortunately, has a tremendous amount of experience with, and typically hears first for help, asking to figure out how we can help save some money for our companies, for our customers, etc. Even our own CEO, former CEO or chairman, Jeff Bezos, was talking about it, how significant this is. Now, the interesting thing about all of our jobs, even though, yes, we've got to batten down the hatches, and even though we're going to think creatively, is like, you're not really given a reprieve. You're not told you don't have to make the trade-offs that are really, really critical. Nobody in this room is going to be in a situation where your boss comes to you and says, hey, yeah, I want you to take it easy on security because I need to cut costs. Or it's okay to lax up a little bit on employee productivity, again, because I need you to cut costs. They're absolutely going to say, hey, let's prioritize. Let's figure out what needs to be on our roadmap. But those trade-offs are very, very real. Now, the neat thing, I think, is that AWS has a tremendous amount of experience with making those trade-offs. This is something that we've been doing for a number of years. We say, we listen to our customers and we work backwards. A lot of the features that we develop comes from listening to folks such as yourselves. And I think a lot of you over time have developed this appreciation that, hey, AWS typically stands for helping control costs, helping reduce costs with the things that you're trying to get done. Over 115 price cuts in our history, several by End User Computing over the years as well. And yet still, we've got to find time to innovate, just like all of you were faced with these trade-offs as well. Over 14,000 new services and features delivered since the inception of AWS in 2006. Over 50 new features developed by the End User Computing group this year. So we are in it with you. We're cutting costs, we're figuring it out, we're listening to the feedback to help address some of the most painful, some of the most challenging cost-cutting issues. And throughout my talk today, I'm going to be talking to you about some of the innovations that we've done to help address that, and give you as many examples that I can that can be food for thought for how you might be able to take that back to your work, take that back to your organization, and drive those cost cuts as well. Really interesting. I've put this slide up, or a slide similar to this, over a number of years, over a number of reInvents. I joke with it. The marketing team in AWS, we typically call this the NASCAR slide for obvious reasons. A ton of really, really cool logos. And usually, what I do here is talk about all of the types of workloads that all of these customers spend their time thinking about, right? The verticals that we help customers with, the industries that we enable. But I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to talk again about costs, right? And point out some of the ways that we've helped some of these customers deal with those costs. Last year, if you were here at this talk a year ago with me, you might recall that I had a colleague of mine from Amazon, one of our IT leaders, come up and talk about how Amazon saves $17 million a year in infrastructure and operating costs by using Workspaces. It's a really, really big deal. And if you recall, she said she does it with just 2 people. Huge organization, hundreds of thousands of workspaces deployed, 17 million in savings, couple people. DocuSign, one of the pioneers in electronic signatures. Really, really cool. You could check it out on our website. They went through a trial of another cloud provider, another VDI in the cloud. And one of the things that they noticed was their use case actually elicited 10x cost savings versus just their trial. They were able to deploy their entire workload on AWS and save 10 times the cost that they would have spent moving it to a different cloud. Really, really crazy. Now, in those two examples I just gave you, they were about infrastructure costs, yeah? They're about like, hey, the things that you would expect when working with AWS, like, hey, this is how we're gonna go about being efficient, spending those resources, being frugal. But that's not the only way that people have used end-user computing services over the years. One of the other examples here, Kyowa Kirin, a pharmaceutical company out of Japan. Really, really neat use case where they were able to go about implementing remote work for their contact center employees. And like, of course, yes, this was something that they were very deliberate about, but had to move aggressively at the start of the pandemic. But think about this for a second. They had a different set of infrastructure costs that they were able to save. $500,000 a month, US dollars a month, $6 million a year in cost savings in real estate costs by sending those workers remote. Really, really cool if you think about this. It's not just the cost of the hardware, it's the cost of all the things that hit our bottom lines. Tons of ways that we can go about enabling meaningful reductions while still focusing on security, while still focusing on end user productivity and making those end users as comfortable as they can possibly be. Let me take a step back. I'm going to zoom out from some of the things that I've talked about. Now, one of the things that people always sort of question me about is, hey, isn't end user computing effectively just workspaces, right? Aren't just the virtual desktop? And one of the cool things that I get to respond with is like, no. We're actually quite a bit bigger than that, and I'm going to get into a lot of that content here with you today. We help your end users, whether it's IT workers, whether it's people accessing your applications, whether it's ISVs trying to do a demo or a trial. There's a whole bunch of different ways that we help serving worker use cases and delivering applications with very, very low latency, with very high security. Now, when we think about, all the features that we try and deliver throughout the year, when we think about how we're going to put together our roadmap, when we get all the feedback at conferences like this and listening to customers throughout the year, we think about, all right, well, our prioritization mechanisms. How do we actually build our roadmap? So we have two guiding principles, two tenets, as we like to say in AWS or at Amazon. One's around flexibility. Right? Adam talked about it today, the ability to scale up and scale down. The ability to do some of the things that you would expect to be able to do based on your experiences of perhaps running an on-prem VDI solution. The other is choice. You got to be able to do this in a whole bunch of different, whether it's end-user devices, end-user operating systems, and you got to be able to enable all these different scenarios that your use cases, that your workers actually are asking you to enable. And if you're an application developer, well, you got to think about, all the different endpoints that you've got to deploy to. So that flexibility, that choice is cardinal to all of the ways that we go about thinking about our roadmap, how we prioritize, how we go and deliver features for you. And you're going to hear a lot about that. That has been a huge input to the way that we've approached things this year. But where do we take our direction from, right? How did we even come up with this flexibility and choice? All right, so this is where my kids are going to be really, really proud of me. Take out your cell phones, have a look at that QR code. That's the Fair Software License Coalition. It's a list of tenets. There's 10 of them. Would love for you to check this out. This is the stuff that effectively says, look, it should be super, super simple for you to continue to do the things that you've done on-prem for years in the cloud provider of your choice. Note, I'm not saying it's always just got to be AWS. This is reInvent. Of course, I want it to be AWS. But it's your choice. And that's fundamentally something that we stand behind, the ability for you to do the things that you need to do based on what your users expect. All right, and so if you're looking for an opportunity, a meaningful opportunity to shape not just how we think about things in end-user computing, but how the entire industry approaches end users accessing the software that they've always done, companies being able to deploy the databases in the way that they've always done, the Fair Software License Coalition is absolutely something that you could lend your way to, or at least participate in, or at least learn a little bit about. There's a ton of great content there. I implore you to check it out. And why do you check it out? Well, it's for all the things that I've talked about, right? These are the trades. These are the trades that go into the roadmap for the end-user computing teams, and these are the trades that I'm sure every single one of you guys are making on a regular basis. And it's stupid hard, I know. Believe me, I know. My team reminds me how hard it is to make all these trades every day. But you have no choice. You gotta be really, really responsible. We have an expression that we use very, very commonly in AWS, it's do more with less. And so what does that mean when you do more with less? How can you actually yield some benefits? Well, I'm going to go back to reInvent last year again, and I'm going to talk about another colleague of mine from a company called Sitel, who was right here on stage with me. It was really cool. If you reflect on that, some of the punchlines of the things that their CTO was talking about was that they deployed over 30,000 workspaces. Very affordable, very cost-effective, improved their security posture, obviously enabled remote work for their contact center. But some really cool artifacts of that came about. Less attrition, because workers were working in the way that they were intending to work, were wanting to work. More schedule adherence, right? Their productivity was going up. The ability for managers to know who was coming online and it actually being there. The ability for people to be sticky with their jobs. That's what this workload enabled. And so again, when you make those trades really, really well, when you prioritize them really, really well, very, very good things happen and your employees will reward you for it. Same thing with some of our application developers, and I'll get into some of those examples in a minute. All right, let me zoom in. What are all the things that we offer with end-user computing? Well, fundamentally, it started with Workspaces in 2014. That was the first part of the portfolio. And it turns out, we messed around for the last few years, and we got a whole family here. Whole family of services, whether it's virtual desktops and virtual desktop adjacent as part of that Workspaces family. But since 2016, we've also had AppStream 2.0. Our ephemeral streaming applications and desktop services, right? This is the easiest way, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, this is the easiest way to deliver SaaS from your applications. And dozens of companies have been doing it this way. And it's not just for ISVs. Even if you work in an enterprise and you've got an application, this is a really convenient way to take that application and turn it into SaaS. Now, for all those folks here who are the DIYers, we'll just give you the protocol directly, and you can deploy it for free to EC2. Pay for just the EC2 resources that you have. One of the world's up-and-coming auto manufacturers does a lot of R&D with it. One of the world's leading media and entertainment companies. Tons of vetting of content by deploying DCV into a system that's custom-built on EC2. Tons more examples. Turns out, because DCV has been around for quite some time, we have a bunch of on-prem customers as well. Very, very cool things that we've been doing with our protocol over the last few years. And as I said, for those who are DIY inclined, this is going to be the way for you to get going. It's a full portfolio, without a doubt. Our virtual desktops. All right, this is kind of neat. You know, a couple months ago, we announced something brand new. We started with Workspaces, I mentioned 2014. Last year, at this conference, right here on stage, we announced Workspaces Web, our fully managed remote browser service. And 2 months ago, we introduced the newest member of the Workspaces family, which is Workspaces Core. It's a set of APIs allowing, whether you're an enterprise or whether you're an ISV, to take the existing VDI or desktop as a service deployment that you've got, use your existing console, use your existing client, just move the infrastructure over to AWS. This is the first time, and when we think about it internally, this is the first time that we've tried really hard to come up with an easy button. And this goes back to that flexibility that we were pushing for. One of those guiding principles, right? These are the things that you've been doing on-prem. Can't I continue to do the exact same things that I've been doing on-prem for years with cloud economics? Workspaces Core is our answer to that. Tons more when we think about, not just the persistent desktop solution, not just our Workspaces Core APIs, not just our remote browser solution, but we have these ephemeral desktops as part of AppStream as well. And it's really, really neat. Some of the customers on that NASCAR slide, again, if you remember, have moved from Workspaces, the persistent version of our desktop, to our non-persistent version, and cut over 50% of their costs. 50%, that's not a little bit. When you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, to say that, hey, you're going to go cut that by half and still have the same number of users and still get the same security, there's a tremendous amount of peace of mind that you can do, that you can achieve with that. And that is exactly what customers have been doing, and that is exactly why we've built out the portfolio we have with virtual desktops. Now, Workspaces Core. Really, really cool. We thought, as we listened to you again about how do we provide that easy button? How do we make it as simple as possible? How do we make it as familiar as possible? And for why? Or for what reason? Well, we started with, the customer and worked backwards. Here's a quote from my colleague on the left, from Goldman Sachs, Harry Labana. Really, really interesting, the ability for Goldman to deploy a purpose-built VDI and DAS solution. Again, this is something that has existed on-prem for a number of years. This is something that they've been managing for a while. And there's a tremendous amount of nuance to it because it's been iterated on. It's been something that they've expanded and compounded into a whole very complex solution. You can't just lift and shift without a lot of deep thought and complexity. Well, now you can. And again, I said, it's not just for enterprises, for ISVs as well. And so we're super excited to start this partnership with Workspaces Core with another incumbent in this industry, right? Isn't it weird for the end user computing guy in AWS to say, hey, we started by partnering with VMware. It's really, really awesome that our colleagues at VMware have taken Horizon 8 and said, hey, this is going to be the way that we're going to enable our customers to achieve the value that they're looking for, the familiarity of their admins, of their staff, using the services, using the console that they've been using for years, the familiarity for their end users, using the BLAST protocol, using the client, and all the features that comes with it, and fully managed infrastructure by AWS underneath. Workspaces Web. Our browser solution. I love the idea of saying to you that you never have to manage the version of Chrome deployed in your enterprise ever again. You just don't have to, right? It's just not something that you're going to have to worry about because it's delivered as a SaaS app. Over 300 security features deployed as a part of it. If you want to disable things like being able to copy and paste, absolutely, it's something that you would expect from a service that AWS provides in this, and yes, you can do that. But here's the kicker. Here's the thing that people tell me about all the time. Here's the thing that people don't know. It's $7 per user per month. It is 1/3 the cost of the cheapest workspace that we have. Does it mean that your user will have to spend their day in the browser? Yeah, it does. That's exactly what it means. And yet still, almost all these customers that I get a chance to talk to throughout the year tell me, hey, about 90% of my job, 90% of my users spend most of their time in the browser. All right, well, why are you deploying a workspace? And this is something really, really neat that we get to say as a part of this. All right, well, what do you do about these last applications that are out there? Like, I've got these one or two, like, yeah, they spend most of their time, but not all of it. We've got one or two more that we need to spend actually using the native application. Yeah, cool, no problem. We have AppStream for that, streaming those applications. You can do it in a way with native app access that makes it look like it's running right there. Per second billing. You can deploy it to something we call Elastic Fleets, another thing that we launched a year ago here. You don't even have to worry about your concurrency. You don't even have to think about scaling up or scaling down. You don't have to think about managing the fleet. We'll give you a serverless fleet. Just use it. It is super, super cost effective. And it's there when you need it. This is a cool story. A company called Neo Financial. It's a Canadian company. They're trying to disrupt the sort of banking industry in Canada. Really, really neat, an up-and-coming company. One of the ways that they were aiming to cut costs and provide sort of secure access without using a VPN was through Workspaces Web. They were able to get through their POC in a matter of hours. It just worked for them, deploying it across the company as we speak. It's really, really neat that we've got this bank thinking sort of progressively, hey, my way of enabling cost cuts is through bring my own device. Okay, cool, that's your choice. Not everybody's for that, but in your case, yeah, it works. You want to give access to the SaaS applications or the internal websites that your users need access to? Great. It's a very, very cost-effective way to do it. We're really excited to partner with them. We have more. One of the world's largest data companies is rolling it out to tens of thousands of users across their company. Again, this is one of the most cost-effective ways. Does it mean that you're going to have a little bit of work? Yeah. Yeah, you know, like you got to think about, hey, my users are going to be spending their entire day in the browser or almost all of their day in the browser. Cool. Is it worth it? Absolutely. You'll be able to reap those productivity benefits. You'll get the security of having no data at rest on the end user device. You get closer to a zero-trust world. You can deploy AppStream for access to one of those onesie-twosie apps that you still need access to. And you get the economics of 1/3 the cost of a workspace. It's pretty awesome. It's a very, very compelling deal. All right, so I've talked about flexibility. I talked about Workspaces Web, being able to spend a lot of time in the browser securely. Let's talk about choice. That's the other thing that people expect from Workspaces. Not only do we have our bring your own license versions, Windows 10, Windows 11 coming soon, we've got our server versions, license included, that you can buy that Windows license from us. We've been delivering an Amazon Linux version for at least 3 or 4 years now. A couple months ago, I was very, very fortunate with my colleagues at Canonical to also introduce an Ubuntu-based virtual desktop. This is really, really neat. Now, we started with this thing thinking like, okay, you know what? This is going to be for the engineers. This is going to be for all the people, the data scientists, the folks who are doing a bunch of computation, the folks who are writing code. But we learned something. It's not just for them. To our surprise, we've had some of the biggest companies in the world approach us and say, hey, you know what, this is going to help me cut some costs, right? I've got some Linux apps that some of my end users use. We have the little logo on the screen there of the contact center, right? So some of these folks have come to us with their contact center use case saying, hey, like we've got Linux apps for some of this contact center software that we use, that we deploy throughout our enterprise. Okay, cool. Here's your chance to go cut those costs, and it comes with 10 years of support from Canonical. It's really, really cool. It's something I definitely, definitely recommend you try out as quickly as you possibly can. All right. Now, I've spent a ton of time talking about cost. It's not always about cost. Not everything that we've done is just cost. There's a lot of other innovation that we've been throughout the year. I'll take you back to last December. Tough December. There are a number of issues that we all worked through together. The number one piece of feedback that I got in the first half of the year, hands down, by a large margin, was on business continuity, was around ensuring that we maintain that 99.9% uptime SLA that is financially backed. And it's pretty awesome, the feedback that I got. tons of different ways of doing it. And you know, some of the things that I found a little bit peculiar was like we actually had this feature, cross-region redirection, the ability for you to use the same sort of connection string to connect to a workspace in different regions. And customers told me, you know what, cool, that's great. Sounds awesome from a technology perspective. I can't afford to have 2 workspaces in 2 regions. It's not economical, it's not practical, especially if one is standby, not even intending to log into it. Maybe I'll log into it. Maybe there will be an issue that comes up from time to time, but this was really, really important. So we had to think about this problem. We had to think really, really hard about this problem. How would we go about solving it? How would we go about giving your end users the best experience that we possibly could? A couple weeks ago, really, really proud to have announced our Workspaces multi-region resiliency feature. This is the ability to do a few simple things on top of what you already do with Workspaces today. Number 1, create a primary and a secondary workspace. Number 2, configure your directory to enable the users to have that primary and secondary. Number 3, use DNS via Route 53, configure that DNS, configure your routing policies, and set up some health checks. This was so neat I wanted to show you. So I'm going to do my best to voice over what we've already got. So here it is. It starts in the Route 53 console, just like you would expect. It starts with setting up a health check. Now in this case, the health check is already set up for that workspace that we've got. In a moment, you're going to see the login screen. And the person will enter their username and password. There it is. Now I want to draw your attention to that connection string. Put it over there if you can see it. You log in, you end up with your fairly vanilla workspace. It's got your bundle. Notice the Zoom application, that's part of it, Firefox. There's a little file right there where the cursor is right now showing, hey, this is in our North Virginia region, but don't take my word for it. I told the team to think a little bit more creatively about how to show, that this workspace is where it is. So I asked them to run the ipconfig command. And if you can see that, you'll see that it's in our US East region. Pay close attention to the IP address that's listed right there. And we'll take a moment and log out. This is your primary workspace. You log in, you do your thing, you end for the day. All right, now this part is for demo purposes only. You could choose to do this part if you wanted to, but this is something that we did to force a failover. So here, we're going to click on the health check, and we're going to toggle its state. It shows up as unhealthy. There you go. You can see it's unhealthy. We're going to log in again. Once you see that dialog box, again, I'll ask you to pay close attention to the connection string. It's the exact same one. If you notice the username, again, it's going to be the exact same one. The intent is for the end user to do nothing different except they log in to our Oregon region. Same bundle, it's got the Zoom application installed there, Firefox up and running on the desktop or up and available on the desktop. There's my Oregon little file there to reinforce that, hey, this for the most part is the same, but actually isn't. And of course, we'll do the ipconfig command to prove to you this is in US West. This is, we think, the coolest disaster recovery solution that exists in our industry. It's really, really awesome. Seamless for the end user, based on DNS, based on routing for the admin, so no work that the admin has to do in some sort of disaster. No meaningful changes to the way that either your admins, your end users go about doing their job. Just log in. And it should work. Now, remember how I framed this problem, right? Customers come to me and said, hey, I can't pay for both. All right, so we took care of that too. And starting as low as $3.25, you can have a fully redundant workspace on top of course, the pricing for your existing workspace. So it's a very, very meaningful deal. And of course, you don't pay for it if you don't use it. So it's pretty awesome insofar as like, hey, you can have that peace of mind and know full well that it's going to be one of the most economical solutions you have to providing redundancy in a primary and secondary region for your end users. Like you, hopefully I'll be able to sleep much better at night knowing that my customers are as redundant as they possibly can be. But disaster recovery is not the only way that we've innovated throughout the year. Tons of security features that we've delivered as well. Our protocol has gone through a number of enhancements. Lots of ways that we've approached encrypting the data as it transports back and forth. One of the things, again, 2 weeks ago, big week for us, obviously, a couple weeks ago, we deployed our SAML 2.0 Federation. Finally GA'd this feature for Workspaces. Is pretty cool. This is something that customers have been asking us for a number of years, and we're glad that we crossed that one off the list. And there was a little paper cut that used to go along with that we've also addressed. For folks who've been using Workspaces for a little while, we had this problem, right? Some folks are going to be nodding their heads with this problem, and I'm sorry, and I'm glad to say we finally fixed it. There was this issue where you would have to log in to the workspace as a resource, and then you would have to do your Windows login. That's gone now. We have addressed that problem. Not only did we address it with Workspaces, we've also addressed it with AppStream. So all of the security work not only is to enable you to use other identity providers such as Jump Cloud and Okta and Ping, but also to deal with some of the productivity issues that have come up throughout the years. And we acknowledge and we're glad to say we've pushed that out for you. Of course, I don't know, a lot of people know this, we've deployed smart cards a couple of years ago and we've been rolling it out steadily. It's available in our commercial regions and of course in our government regions as well. So that smart card support for different ways of doing authentication, radius service support for multi-factor auth, and on and on and on, and all the ways that we go about helping people think about security. Now, 2019, that was the first time that I ever got to speak on stage at reInvent. You may recall, if you were around at the time, I introduced a brand new product called a Workspaces Streaming Protocol. Now, the Workspaces Streaming Protocol is our own purpose-built, custom-built, in-house protocol. We've been using PC over IP by Teradici, now HP Anywhere, for years. We still do. But we thought it was really, really important for us to have a little bit more control over the way that customers were actually interacting with those workspaces. We want a little bit more control from a security perspective. We want a little bit more control from a cost perspective. So we innovated here. We thought about this cloud-native protocol. And it's been out for a bit. It was in beta, then it GA'd, and it needed some features. It needed some love. So we took the nice DCV team, and we merged it with the Workspaces protocol team, and we've sort of turbocharged our Workspaces streaming protocol. And what we've got is one of the best ways to do two-way audio video seamlessly through this protocol. One of the most important things that customers have been asking about through the pandemic, this is something that we just offer natively. No plugins that need to be installed, no additional costs that come with it. Tons of graphics support, tons of value that this protocol adds. Many, many different ways for you to implement telemetry that comes with it. Now, telemetry. This is a cool thing that went sort of public preview this week. It's from not our team, it's from the CloudWatch team. An internet monitoring service, something that you'll be able to use in tandem with your workspaces so that if a user complains to you, why is my workspace slow? Why can't I log into my workspace? You will now have a tool as an administrator to go and see exactly what's happening here. Again, this is something from the CloudWatch team. I strongly recommend that you check this out. It's really, really cool. Something that we've been working on with them for a while to help provide that sort of last mile bit of information as to what's going on. And of course, as part of, I think, things that people would expect with our existing protocols, well, we have an agreement with Zoom that we just announced. Right? So you can install that Zoom plugin with our PC over IP workspaces, and you can get that high fidelity audio video that you would expect, that you've seen used extensively throughout the pandemic. Really, really cool that we've done these better together partnerships. I talked about VMware, talking about Zoom. I can promise you there's many, many more to come in the coming months. So stay tuned. It's going to be pretty cool. And stay tuned to what? Stay tuned to these things right here. Again, if you'd like, grab your phones, follow the QR codes. It'll take you to either our Workspaces main page, our Workspaces core page, or our Workspaces web page. We'd love for you to spend some time with them. We'd love for you to figure out what works and what doesn't work. All right, like I said, this isn't just a talk for enterprise IT folks. This is a talk for everybody who builds an application, not just an ISV, although we've partnered with a number of ISVs over the years, but even in the enterprise where you've got that app, that one app that needs to be deployed. Well, we're offering that tool to say, deploy it as SaaS to your end users. Why SaaS? Why does that matter? Forrester did a study on this just a couple years ago. Really, really interesting results. 300 people surveyed. 81% of them said they expect their applications to be SaaS. They expect, 83% expects, trials and demos to be available in the browser. So if this is the direction that our workforce is expecting, that our end users, if you're selling an application or building an application, if this is what they're expecting, well, great, this is the best way to go about delivering it. You got some choices. And how are you going to go about delivering it? Repurpose, replatform, rebuild, lots of re's. Turns out it's actually really, really difficult. And potentially really expensive and really time-consuming. And you have to think about things like your test matrix. And you have to think about things like, hey, like, what does this mean for the economics? Like, am I pausing development on the systems that I have today? And if you've got these sales channels and you know, one of them brings up a bug, like, how do you balance resources? Very, very difficult problem. Very, very difficult problem. One that we say we're going to help you with as much as we possibly can without having to rewrite even a single line of code with your application, without requiring your end users to download something just for this thing to work. So remember what I said, you know, a little bit earlier about Workspaces Web, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to never manage that version of Chrome throughout your enterprise? Well, why can't you just extend that for every application in your enterprise? Right? Instead of worrying like, hey, does, you know, such and such user have the latest bits of X, Y, and Z? And just make that problem go away. Access over the internet, lock it down to a corporate location, that's cool. Thinking about a CI/CD pipeline that you could put together with this is one of the most effective ways that all of these partners of ours have been able to use to deploy even faster, to get their changes out even faster. Clearly, I'm a big fan of referring to things that we talked about last year, so I'm going to do that one last time, talk about IHS Markit. They were on stage with me as well, talking about going from over 45 hours to deploy a change to under 3. So what did that mean for productivity? That meant that they were expecting to do 600 deployments in 2021, and that number was going to go up to 2,000 deployments of their software in 2022. That's incredible productivity gains. Truly, that CI/CD pipeline is something that IHS Markit has been able to leverage, all because they just moved their existing Windows app to AppStream. And it doesn't just have to be AppStream. I talked about the DIYers in the world. Neat company out of India called Tally. It's an accounting software company. They launched a new service called Tally Prime, right? The SaaS version of their accounting software. Absolutely built using DCV on EC2. But here's the cool thing about it, the really, really cool thing about it. They compiled their binaries using Windows emulation APIs. So they were able to take that app and move it off of Windows, save the license fees, and now they have pure Linux app. And thinking about that test matrix, well, they don't have to worry about what's running on the end user endpoint. They just have to worry about Tally Prime being supported on an Amazon Linux server. That's it. Really, really neat. Very, very cost effective for them. Improve their margins, improve their reach. This is a global company with global customers. Really, really, really important for them to be able to have that continuity. They did it in a very cost effective way. Love for you to click through. This is just the AppStream link. Very easy for you to learn more. Tons of SaaS ideas, tons of companies who've learned in a whole bunch of different industries. Whether it's trials, MATLAB, for instance, saying they used to take weeks to deploy training down to just 3 hours. SolidWorks doing all their demos, all their trials through AppStream. Really, really neat. And then there's a bunch of household names. Really, really big companies, really, really big software titles that are all delivered through AppStream. And part of their marketing MO is to say that we don't even talk about how we deliver this application. If our users think it's being delivered like a desktop app running on their endpoint, cool. In fact, that's better for our brand. That's less for us to explain. Awesome. We're down for that 100% of the time, so long as we're helping you move that application to SaaS on AWS. In summary, just to recap everything, we're more than just virtual desktops. It's a full portfolio. Not only do we have Workspaces Web, Workspaces Core, AppStream, and of course, the traditional Workspaces offering. We've got so much more, all of it based on flexibility and choice. Second, I implore you, spend some time researching the Fair Software License Coalition. Really, really cool work that they're doing. All about giving you the choice, the freedom to choose what you think is the best way to build in the cloud. Tons of ways for you to get SaaS. And finally, perhaps most important, keep in touch with our blog. Lots of things that didn't quite make it in for this reInvent, but they're going to be rolling out over the coming weeks. Last but not least, we're having a reception tomorrow at Electra at the Palazzo. Would love to see you there. Hundreds of our guests are going to be there as well, more members of the team. Not only would we love to see you there, but I'd love to also see you at our booth on the convention floor. Tons of demos for the things that we talked about here today. Really, really cool stuff. You get to actually put your hands on it and ask the experts themselves. And of course, a bunch of different tracks. If you weren't able to attend all of them, there's a bunch of repeats we got set up as well. Would love to see you out. I want to thank you for your time and attendance today. I know you got a busy schedule, a packed schedule. It's nuts here at reInvent this year. It feels like the biggest one ever. But again, thank you. Do feel free to stop by and ask me any questions here afterwards. And as always, would love some feedback. Please do include in the mobile app. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.